Perfect. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. I think we have everything figured out now. This is our third webinar in the webinar series, Thriving During Quarantine. We're very excited to present this to all of you guys. My name is Adnan Perwez. I am one of the 2 student directors for MSA National. And I've worked in regional councils before. This webinar is specifically targeted at providing you resources as MSA leaders and as MSA students to work through this very unique circumstance and time all of us are in. And inshallah, we have a lot of amazing speakers and organizations lined up to do that. Just a quick introduction. MSA National is an organization that's been serving Muslim students for over 56 years. We have had a number of phases in the past. Currently, what we do is we serve Muslim students throughout the country by providing resources to MSA regional councils, which you will hear from throughout this webinar. And we provide a variety of resources. This specific resource, the webinar series, is a resource that has been under work for some time. And we actually have already completed 2 previous webinars, one with Yaqeen about the Muslim identity and building it through the MSA, and the second with Ifanka about getting and advocating for halal food on college campuses. Both of these webinars are on our site, so go ahead and visit us at msanational.org, where you can access these webinars as well as this webinar when it's done, as well as a lot of other information and a variety of resources. In terms of this actual webinar, we're going to be dividing it into 3 parts. The first part is going to be with Hanan, who is joining us with the Family Youth Institute. She'll be talking about mental health and taking care of our own selves and our communities during this difficult time. The second part will be with regional councils. So we have M. Musa, the Regional Council for the Midwest, LSC, the Regional Council for from Texas, and MSA West, the Regional Council for the West Coast. They will be sharing initiatives and resources, both for those specific regions and also in general. The idea being able to provide you guys with ideas and resources that you can access. And the final part will be a Q&A session where we'll be taking questions through the live YouTube chat and delegating it to the specific speakers that have joined us today. In terms of our partners, here they are again. Again, we'll be beginning with the Family and Youth Institute, and then we'll be moving on to these 3 MSA regional councils in order, and then ending with the Q&A. So Hanan is the person joining us from FYI. Ziad will be the M. Musa speaker. Amira is the chair at LSC, and Hasna and Maryam are the internal and external vice president at MSA West. All right, part 1. So part 1 will begin with, before we actually begin with it and before I introduce Hanan more in depth, one of the core hadiths is this idea of loving for your brother what you love for yourself. And oftentimes as MSA leaders, we are called on to serve our community, but before we can actually do that, we have to remember to serve and build and heal ourselves. So this particular part, before we jump into what MSAs are doing right now, the initiatives, the resources, everything, all the amazing things that are going on, and the ideas of how you yourself can help serve your community, it's essential to take a step back and ensure that you yourself are able to get through this difficult time. Because if you're not able to serve yourself, you're not going to be able to serve anyone else. And that is very similar to one of the metaphors we use is, when you're on a plane, one of the things that the pilot says is make sure that you put your own oxygen tank on before you provide the mask to someone sitting near you. So similarly, we need to have the resources to build up ourselves before we have the resources to build others. Okay, it's my pleasure to go ahead and introduce the speaker for the first part, Hanan Hashim. Hanan Hashim is a research assistant and community educator at the Family and Youth Institute, FYI. The Family and Youth Institute conducts research on factors that promote or prevent the development of families and young people. They also hold educational workshops. They focus on 4 areas of research: youth, marriage, parenting, mental health, and well-being. Hanan herself has completed her master's in counseling psychology at Wayne State in 2016, and she's currently pursuing both her doctorate in counseling psychology and her master's in quantitative methods at the University of Texas, Austin. Her research particularly focuses on contextual factors influencing American Muslim youth development. She's also a community organizer. We're very lucky to have her with us today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her, inshallah.
All right, Assalamu alaikum, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah khairan for having me. I feel very honored to be speaking to you all, especially given that MSA is something very near and dear to my heart, and just was a big support for me in undergrad and even grad school, alhamdulillah. So we can go to the next slide. So Jazakallah khairan Adnan for that introduction about FYI. So FYI, yes, we've been doing work in the community for the last 10 years, alhamdulillah. And I want to encourage you guys to get involved if you feel like this is an area that you feel strongly about. We have internship opportunities that are available to students, to undergrad students and graduate students with different skill levels, whether it's in research, whether it's in professional development or graphic design, etc. I also want to share that we recently completed a national assessment on what the community needs in regards to Ramadan, given the coronavirus and given the pandemic and the quarantine. And so we're writing that up right now. So there is a link there if you guys want to get that in your email, inshallah. And then also I just want to let you know that we are doing a live conversation on Twitter, so at the FYI_org, if you want to join that as well. So let's get started with the presentation, with the content. Okay, so if I were to sit down with every single person tuning in, I'm sure everybody is going to have some sort of challenges in one of these domains, right? Whether it's your mental health, you feel like it's just really hard to get motivated in the morning or during the day, whether it's your spiritual health, it's just feeling like, either like just tuning into lectures or checking in or making sure you're completing your salahs on time is really hard, or feeling like you feel like there's just so much content now, so everything is available to you, that feeling like there's a sense of burden on yourself to complete or to be as involved as you can be, whether it's social, not being able to see your friends, physical, if you go to the gym, usually you just can't do that anymore, right? If you enjoy, taking walks with your friends, that's a little bit harder as well. And then of course, financial, whether that's for you personally or family members. And of course, that's going to impact you in all of these different ways. And I want you guys to know that if one of these things are impacted, all of them are impacted in some way. So they're all interconnected. And so today, inshallah, I'm going to focus on the first 4 on top. And then of course, there will also be like financial resources that are talked about later on. So let's go to the next slide. So one day, right, we were all just hanging out in school, hanging out with our friends, going to our MSA meetings, like trying to get people to come to our MSA meetings. And then all of a sudden we were told that you have to stay home, right, for a month. And then over time, it just kept on getting extended, right? So everything that we've been planning for, I know that the MSAs in Texas were really excited about Showdown. I know that there are so many seniors that were so ready to graduate. There were banquets. There were so many different things that were going on that just had to stop. Like there was just nothing to be done except cancel all of those things, right? And all the effort that went into it just feels like it kind of went wasted. And so Of course, if those things that are important to you are changing, whether that's your ability to hang out with your friends, or that's your fear of safety for your parents or for someone that you know, or yourself and your health, that's going to affect you, right? There's no doubt in that. If you're not affected at all, 0%, I would be a little bit worried, right? Because we are human and we are affected by the things that happen to us. And so I'm glad that you know that there is some sort of emotion that is coming off when it comes to the changes that have been happening. And I want you guys to know that you are allowed to feel those things. A lot of times we are told that, I mean, the very famous get over it, right? Just change your thoughts. It's okay. Just pray. It's fine. Like, just don't let it bother you, right? Which is really hard given that if something bothers us, it bothers us. So, no one was prepared for this, right? There was no, like, I'm getting my PhD in counseling, and I promise you there is no class or manual about what to do when there is a pandemic going on. This is not something that happens often, right? This is the first time for all of us. And so we're all trying to figure out what our new normal is, right? And it's really a chance for us to figure out what we all individually need. And it's the weirdest thing, subhanAllah, because on one hand, it feels like the world is ending and nothing will ever be the same. But then on the other hand, like, you know, you're still, you know, the days are still, the time's still running, days are still coming, like assignments are still due, you know, whatever it is, things are still happening as normal. But on the other hand, it just feels like chaos, right? And so the reality is that we do have to find our new normal. And I saw this meme going around, and I actually really enjoy the contrast here, right? Because I think for some of us, we do need that motivation of like, this is it. This is the time that we, you know, making sure that we learn a new skill or getting more knowledge or whatever it is. That's what's going to help us, right? But for some of us, that's not the case. For some of us, that just sounds like a lot because we can't even take care of ourselves right now, right? And so if we go to the next slide, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you haven't, it basically just shows that we have this hierarchical order of what we need in our lives, in order to live healthy lives, right? And the most basic is our physiological needs, right? Air, food, water, hygiene, etc. And then it goes up to safety, right? So when we think about the people, like, you know, being afraid that you're going to get the virus, being afraid if someone in your family starts coughing or getting a fever, being afraid for their health. And then it goes up to love and belonging, right? So our ability to connect with people, our ability to hang out with our friends and connect with family members as well as we used to. Sometimes distance does us a lot of good with family, right? And sometimes being around family all the time can be really hard given the different personalities. And then there's esteem, right? So like respect, confidence, mastery, being able to do the things that you enjoy. And then there comes self-actualization, right? So feeling like you're living this holistic life. And so if we're not figuring out what we need on that physiological level, it's going to be pretty tough to figure out like how we're going to live a holistic life, or figure out like how can we master a skill, right? And this particular picture was actually created by Heal with Sarah. So I actually recommend you guys follow her Instagram page. I know her personally. She's a wonderful counselor here in Austin, and she has a lot of really good tips given the virus and given the pandemic and how to take care of yourself. So we're going to start with mental and physical health. So like I said before, it's pretty common to feel, if we can go to the next slide. So it's pretty common to feel something, right? Whether that's anxiety, whether that's like sadness or worry, right? But it's important for us to be able to distinguish between what healthy emotion is and what unhealthy emotion is. And so the difference is it comes down to your ability to function, right? If I'm just worried, but I'm able to do all my work, I'm able to connect with people, I'm able, you know, to make sure I eat and sleep, etc. That's that's normal, right? And of course, like you should use the coping skills that you've been using. But if it's coming to a point where you're finding yourself in bed for like 16 hours a day, if you haven't showered in a week, if you're not able to eat food, if you can't get yourself to get up and like, pray, and it just feels like the world is just weighing on you, that's a problem. That's where you need to talk to someone, right? And that's where you need to make sure that you reach out. Because again, like think about it in like that. Think about the hierarchy of need, right? Where is it that you feel like you're okay, and where is it that you feel like you're not doing so well? And if the bottom needs are not being met, your mental health is not going to it's going to be really hard for your mental health to get better, right? And it's pretty normal, and this, you can find this like even on the CDC page where they write out like there's going to be changes in your eating habits, there's going to be changes in your sleeping patterns, you are going to feel fear and anxiety, and you're going to feel exhausted and lethargic, right? But you feel exhausted and lethargic because of your habits with sleeping and eating, right? If you're not sleeping, you're going to be tired, right? Even on a normal day. If you're not eating properly, you're going to feel very exhausted and find it very hard to function. So again, it comes down like it starts with like those basic needs. And if you feel like that's missing, that's where I would start. Like make sure to eat, the appropriate amount of food that you're supposed to be eating in a day. Make sure that you're sleeping. And if you can't sleep, make sure that you're using some techniques to get you to sleep. And then, of course, connecting with nature, subhanAllah. There's such a medicinal effect of just being outside and being with nature, taking a walk. Highly recommend, even if you're not like a person who likes walking. Think about the times that you're on campus and you're having to walk from one class to another. You have like no choice, right? There's something very healing in that. And so I highly recommend taking care of your body. And then, of course, taking care of your mind. So if you're at a point where you feel like you're not able to function, talk to someone. That's one of the hardest things that I've found. So in the Muslim community, what I've found generally is with our Muslim brothers, they generally just like don't talk much about it. They don't ask each other. But then with our Muslim sisters, like we ask each other how we're doing, but it's very hard for us to be honest in our responses to one another and actually say like, I'm not doing okay. I need help. Like I need help kind of processing why this is affecting me so much. And so I really encourage you guys to be push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone, outside of what you normally do, to really get that support that you need. And I put here, talk to someone you trust who is your senior, because there is valuable wisdom that we can get from the people in our lives, whether that's like, you have a mentor in the community, the imam, parents, if you're close to your parents, or just like an older sibling. It's really helpful to talk to someone and feel that you're cared for in that type of relationship. And then, of course, having self-compassion for yourself. If you're not functioning right now, if you're not able to take care of yourself, you're not going to just wake up tomorrow and be able to do that. That's not how it works, right? Just like thinking about like working out, right? If you go to the gym one day, you're not going to just bulk up the next day. That's not how it works. It really takes progress, and it takes slow but consistent progress, right? So set yourself some goals, add activities that you enjoy. What do you enjoy doing? Do you enjoy cooking? Make sure you try to cook one meal in a day, right? Or 2 meals in a week. Do you enjoy biking? Do you have pets? Pets are very helpful in this time to help ground you, especially if you're feeling really anxious and you feel like you're stuck in your head. Pets and things that are like around you are really good at kind of getting you out of that mindset. So I would say very clearly, write down the things that you enjoy doing. Write down the things that you feel that you should be doing in the day that you have to be doing, right? So whether that's like, even when it comes to attending class, just write those down and then figure out how you can get all of those done in a day, right? And if it means like emailing your professor and telling them like, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm gonna kind of check out a little bit, do that. Reach out to your professors and reach out for support for sure. So let's talk about, so the next part that I want to talk about is spiritual health, right? And the limits of what we control. So if we, so there is 100, like, even if this pandemic wasn't going on, there's so much stuff already happening in our lives. And a lot of that stuff we just have no control over, right? And that's where our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in, right? There are things we have control over, like how long you're on your phone each day, but then there's things that we don't have control over, which is like if someone in your family gets sick, right? The fact that so many people have lost their jobs. You know, things like, you know, that you have an exam coming up, right? The fact that you have these exams, you can't control it. You're going to have to still take them anyways. And so I highly suggest that you write these down, make a list. Writing it down is very different from just making that list in your head. I suggest getting a piece of paper and a pencil and literally writing down things that I can control in my life right now, things that I cannot control, and being able to look at it and look at it on a piece of paper can be really helpful for you to take a step back and understand, like, okay, the things that I can control, I'll start working on those, and the things that I can't control, there's a point where I need to really stop myself from thinking about those things. But of course, like, again, that's where your spiritual health really takes over, right? Because whether you, like, whoever you are, wherever you are in your life, there's always things that you can't control. And so, especially given that Ramadan is coming up, really focusing on our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How often do you talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's just like, I don't know, while you're brushing your teeth, right? Whatever it is. I suggest that you make dua constantly, especially about those things that you wrote on your list that you can't control, right? Because the only being that can control them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so being able to make dua is like really a win-win situation for you, because you get ajr for making dua anyways. If they're not answered here, they're going to be answered in the hereafter, inshallah. And then also making specific dua for another person each day, right? Focusing your efforts on helping other people can actually really help you out in this crisis. And there's been research done that, like, when a crisis does happen, individuals who reach out and help others, right? So thinking about the Muslim students in your MSA, the members, your community that you're having to serve, being able to put your energy into other people is actually serves as like a protective factor when it comes to, you know, post this crisis. You know, people who help others do better. So even if that's like in a dua that you do for another person, or in the activities that, or in the, you know, the events or the things that, the projects that you guys have coming up to help your community, I really suggest, like, I want you guys to know that that's actually really good for your health as well. So doing those things actually helps you as well, subhanAllah. And then of course, like Ramadan prep, right? Like Ramadan is next week, subhanAllah. So like, what do you feel like you're able to do to prepare for Ramadan? Of course, like, again, I wanna like bring up that there are so many lectures now, and there are so many ways that you can be more connected to your deen, but you want to be careful not to like overload yourself, right? Because the last thing you would ever want is to get burnt out from doing anything, right? And so really taking the time to understand, like, what are your limits, right? Although we're all at home all the time, we're all still very, very busy. We're not just like hanging out and, you know, doing whatever. Like, you guys have all these meetings that you're on. You guys are on this webinar. You have class, you have quizzes, exams, projects, like those things are still going on. And so I would actually argue that you're even busier than you were before, because there is no separation between like home and like rest time and then actual work. You're just constantly on. And so understanding what your limits are. Just because all of these resources are available, it does not mean that you have to tap into all of the resources, right? Figure out, what is it that you need? Do you need to listen to like a 10-minute lecture every night? Do you need to listen to a 30-minute lecture once a week, and you feel like that's going to give you what you need? Then that's what you do, right? You need, like, subhanAllah, it's really, sometimes we set a goal for ourselves and we're like, oh, I can do this easily. I did it easily for one day, so I'll add another thing, for the rest of the week. I don't suggest you do that. I suggest you stay consistent with the small things, and really building that routine, so that it becomes part of your lifestyle instead of feeling like overburdening yourself and eventually collapsing and burning out. Of course, a big part of what's going on now is maintaining relationships, right? So like you're just not seeing the people that you normally see every day. We're automatically used to seeing people in class or like meetings or just like, the cafeteria or wherever it is that you guys hang out in your respective universities. But now it's not available for us, right? We have to make an effort to connect with people, which is like another thing on our to-do list. It's like another thing that we have to do, right? And it takes a lot of energy, especially if you're someone who has been relying on the people that you just normally see. It's going to be even more effort for you to reach out to people. But that is going to be so important. Social isolation is one of the most dangerous ingredients when it comes to depression and anxiety and mental health, because you get stuck in your thought process and you don't have a sounding board, you don't have other people to observe, and there's no chance for you to get other perspectives just by observing other people. So I highly suggest reaching out, again, turning your attention to helping others, whether that's your friends or whether that's your family, the people that are in your home. Of course, we all have different relationships with our family, with each individual in our family. And for a lot of us, the people in our family have lost their jobs, or they are considered essential workers, or now they're working from home. And it just changes the dynamic completely of of those relationships, on top of the relationships already being very different and dynamic and complex, right? So I highly suggest, if you're comfortable and you feel safe doing so, finding ways to spend more time with your family that doesn't feel like work, right? So whether that's like praying together, eating together, just like decorating things, family night, I highly suggest board games. They're such a great way for people to tap into each other's personalities, right? Of course, like some of us are very competitive. It can be dangerous, like act accordingly, but really connecting with the people in your life and finding new ways to connect with your friends as well. There are a lot of resources now, like a lot of ways that you can connect. Make it a routine, make it a habit to like reach out to like one person at least, right? However many people you're reaching out to, if you feel like that's not enough, you're feeling that high level of solitude, reach out to another person, try a different way, try something else and see if it works. And when it comes to building habits and routines, it's actually like having like an accountability partner or building habits with another person can actually be really helpful as well, inshallah. But of course, when we're staying connected, and we can go to the next slide, when we're staying connected to one another, we're heavily relying on media, right? We're heavily relying on our phones, on the internet. I have no idea what would happen right now if we didn't have the internet and didn't have our phones. And I really don't want to think about it too hard. But one thing that we know for sure, right, is everything we do and everything we consume is going to impact us, right? And I truly believe, and I know that we all have that internal voice in our head that tells us, all right, you've watched a little too much Netflix. Like maybe this is time to like turn it off, right? Or maybe you've been on the phone for too long, or whatever it is. Listen to that voice. That voice is there to protect you and to tell you what you need. So listen to that voice and just turn it off, right? Have certain times of the day, even if it's like 30 minutes, where you're just going to be internet free, right? And you're just going to kind of sit with yourself or sit with someone around you or draw or do an activity that doesn't require the internet. Even if it's like half an hour a day, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 2 minutes, if you feel like you are so glued to the internet and to media, whatever it is that you can do, right? If you're like, oh, I already do that, alhamdulillah, great job. If you're like, there's no way I'm 100% 24/7 connected, start with 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes after you wake up, just don't touch your phone and see what happens, subhanAllah. And then of course, like, you know, there's a lot of news sources. There's a lot, I mean, the fact that we have 24/7 news channels, like so many of them, is very overwhelming, again, even on like a normal day. And so of course, the purpose of a lot of these news channels, right, is to instill fear in you and feel like you have to keep watching so that they can save you, so that they can tell you something that's going to make you feel better. When in reality, that's not going to really happen, right? So I suggest having like 3 questions. If you feel like you're kind of stuck to the news sources, have like 3 questions max that you want answered, that you know, like, okay, I'll look this up. That's all I needed to know, right? Whether it's like you wanted to know, you know, if there's like extended stay-at-home order, if you wanted to know like the number of cases, if you wanted to see like what the trends are, whatever it is, know what you're looking for before you start just going down this rabbit hole. And then choose 1 or 2 news sources to rely on for information, because they're all going to say the same thing. They're all saying the same thing in different words, or even the same words a lot of times. And so pick like 1 or 2 news sources that you know, that you trust, and that you know are not going to just try to make you feel afraid, and stick with that, inshallah. Okay, and we can go to the next slide. So I highly also suggest having a daily routine. If you feel like you are at a point where like you're just feeling so overwhelmed and you're not really able to function that well, a daily routine can be really, really helpful, right? And you don't want the routine to make you feel more stressed. You want the routine to give you structure and kind of just tell you what to do, right? So it's basically like having, like basically going into the future and then figuring out how you can like talk to yourself in the future through the schedule, right? So here's like an example, right? And of course, having consistent wake and sleep time, it can be really helpful. It's going to be hard in the first week or so, and especially with Ramadan coming up, that's going to be pretty tricky. But even in Ramadan, even if you don't sleep the normal, you know, like Isha to Fajr time, then like trying to figure out what is a consistent schedule for you to be able to sleep and maintain your health. Okay, we can go to the next slide, inshallah. So here are some resources, more resources that you guys can tap into. I just want to remind you again of the resources on the FYI website, whether it's the Ramadan in time of COVID, sign up for updates for that, or we also already have another toolkit, just well-being in the time of Corona, that you guys have access to. It's on our website. All the toolkits are free. And then I have one more slide, which basically just says, it says remember, because I want everybody to remember that we are all on different paths when it comes to the grief and frustration and the sadness that we are feeling, right? Maybe like if I'm a senior, maybe I didn't really care about graduating that much. I can't expect other people to not care about graduating that much as I do, right? Other people, maybe this is something that they've been waiting for a very, very long time, and they've been very excited and they've been envisioning it, and now it's gone, right? And so it's really important not to judge the other people in their process and in their path where they are in regards to like processing the grief and frustration. For some of us, maybe we've already figured out a routine at this point. We're like, hey, I'm good. Why hasn't everybody else done it, right? For the same reason that the first 2 weeks was really hard for you, and for the first 2 weeks was fine for a lot of people, right? We're all figuring this out. We all have different coping skills that we automatically do. And so all of our coping skills are coming out at this time, but it's a different time. So it may or may not be working, right? And so asking yourself, like, what has been helpful for you? Like thinking back to the last 3 weeks, like, what are the things that you did do that were really helpful? How can I maintain that in my schedule and make sure that I'm being very intentional about taking care of myself? So that's all I have for today, inshallah. So making sure that you're like figuring out like what your limits are, figuring out what you need separate from other people, I highly suggest like tapping into different resources, whether there's like so many Instagram pages that have been really awesome about having very specific coping skills that they suggest. There's also the FYI website. If you need to talk to a therapist, if that's what needs to happen, everybody's doing teletherapy now. So you don't even have to go to a therapist's office, which I think makes it a bit easier. Then that's what you need to do, right? But make sure that you're reaching out and staying connected, and just understanding what you need separate from other people, inshallah.
Perfect. Thank you so much once again, Hanan, for that presentation. Just a reminder, Hanan will be here for the remainder of the webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to post them in the YouTube chat and we'll get back to them, inshallah, in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. We'll have a Q&A session. We're going to go ahead and move to part 2, MSA Leadership. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Before I actually hand this over to the regional councils to share what they're doing and a lot of good ideas and initiatives your own MSAs can partake in, I wanted to quickly just go over 2 things. First, the major challenges facing MSA leaders right now, and then also an overview of regional councils. But in terms of challenges, this is a short list of challenges we created that we've noticed due to trends. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of instability. Core events like GBMs and Islamic Awareness Weeks, they've been canceled. There's questions around transitioning. How are you guys going to do elections? What is that going to look like for the new board? What is next year going to look like? Is there going to be a virtual fall semester? Is it going to be in person? Questions about fundraising, questions about grad banquets, questions about the personal mental health and physical health and economic well-being of your fellow officers and community members. And before we go to the councils to talk more about what they've seen in their own regions, I wanted to emphasize 2 things. First of all, that MSA National and MSA councils together are here to support you through this time. And second, that a lot of the time, it's important to remember that this isn't something that your own MSA is individually facing. This is a systemic problem that all of us are facing together, and it requires a unified response. And so sometimes during these times of difficulty, we're able to do things that we otherwise would not have been able to do. It creates potential and it creates a unique strand of creativity within us. So if we come together as a community, if we share resources, if we share ideas, if we engage in common initiatives, then inshallah, we can get through this stronger than before. Moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to what a regional council is. You might or might not have heard that term before. A regional council is essentially an organization of Muslim students and alumni that unify MSA chapters and Muslim students across a particular geographical region. So today we have 3 MSA regional councils joining us: MSA West from California, the Lone Star Council from Texas, and Musa from the Midwest. We also have other councils in Florida, Boston, Philadelphia, but these are the 3 regions that are specifically joining us. And inshallah, if you're interested in starting your own council, if you're interested in working together, please reach out to us. We would love to help initiate that sort of effort, especially right now. Moving on to our first speaker, inshallah, Ziad Dadaboy. He is the co-founder of Musa, which is the regional council of the Midwest, colored in purple on the map above. And he is going to talk about some of the initiatives and ideas MSAs are doing in that specific area. So I'll hand it over.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Ziad Dadaboy. I'm the co-founder of Musa, the Midwest Muslim United Student Association, alongside Muhammad Kamran. So next slide. So a little bit about Musa. We're a grassroots organization comprised of Midwest MSAs from 9 states, which include Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. Though we started, from inspiration from all the different resources around us, looking at MSA West, looking at Lone Star Council, looking at what MSA National is doing, and we saw that there was a need for a regional council in the Midwest to unite all the MSAs here that have been doing such amazing work. And through our conversation with these MSAs, we focused on 3 key pillars, which is social work, service to the MSAs, and civic connections. And we implement these pillars by our core values. And above all else, we do everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in the next few slides, just keep that in mind, inshallah. So next slide. So one of the first things, that we really wanted to be was a service to the MSAs in the Midwest. And what we mean by that was really trying to provide them resources and opportunities that they wouldn't be able to achieve just on their own. So really utilizing the strength of coming together as a region. So in the pictures here, we went out and we actually did road trips to all the different MSAs, trying to meet up with the presidents and really get them to start talking and seeing what they can achieve together, inshallah. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to provide a service to the MSAs. On the next slide. Another thing that we feel is very big with the MSAs in the Midwest is having that civic connection. And that means with the amazing organizations present, not just in our region, but nationwide. So we're looking at building amazing relationships with organizations like Miftah, with Yaqeen, with MLFA, with all the care chapters in our area, and Muppies and Believers Bailout. And, I Heart Halal, we are going to have them at our festival. So alhamdulillah, we see that there's a lot of strength in the organizations around us, and we want to build those connections with the Midwest MSAs and those organizations. So next slide. And so this would usually be the slide for social work, but subhanAllah, because of, the whole pandemic, we decided to highlight some of the stuff that the MSAs are doing during this time. So these are a few of the MSAs in the Midwest that we saw were doing amazing things, virtually, and really taking advantage of having, during this pandemic, what can they still do to connect with their communities. So you have, the OSU MSA having, Zoom meetings with the brothers and sisters and trying to figure out, how they can still keep those connections. You have the University of Minnesota MSA doing things like, monthly halakas, also weekly stuff with their chaplain. So really keeping in connection with the community. As well as you see UIC MSA, they're partnering with other religious organizations to really see, a faith-based look at the coronavirus. And then the University of Kentucky, they're partnering with their university and different departments in them to do a Ramadan panel and a virtual fastathon. So what we see is in the Midwest, they're really focused on helping each other, stay connected during these times. And so alhamdulillah, we're really happy that, the Midwest MSAs, they're really trying to tackle this time in a very productive manner. So we're really proud of them. So inshallah, if you follow us at Midwest MSA, you can see a lot of the stuff that the MSAs are doing because we're going to be highlighting in our stories and sharing it for them. As well as inshallah, follow MSA National and all the other amazing people on this call. I just want to say Jazakallah khair again for having us.
Thank you so much, Ziad. Once again, definitely please do follow Musa. They are a new council, but they've been doing so much work, mashallah, and we're all very excited to see where they go in the future. It's my pleasure to announce our next speaker for the regional councils, Amira Khan. She is the chair of Lone Star Council of Showdown fame. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to LSE and Amira.
Alrighty. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Jazakallah khairan for hopping on and hearing all the amazing things that LSC and all the other councils, the FYI and MSA National are putting together so that way we can, go ahead and move forward and work through this really difficult time. So as Adnan mentioned, I am the chair of MSA Lone Star Council. Now, Lone Star Council, or commonly known as LSC, is an umbrella organization that connects collegiate or university level MSAs across Texas for the sake of Allah. So we focus on, facilitating programming, events, and also, and most importantly, the training of Muslim students leaders. And we operate with the understanding that through cooperation, we can achieve much more than we can individually. So if you go ahead and move to the next slide, you can see just a snapshot of not all, but even just some of the MSAs that are registered with us. We've been around since 2002, so alhamdulillah, reaching our 20-year mark in just a few more years. And we have a membership that runs on an annual basis that is completely free for all collegiate and university level MSAs in Texas. We carry the same pillars that a lot of other regional councils do. We focus really on amplifying and connecting MSAs with each other. Texas, mashallah, is a huge and great state that has a lot of different resources, and a lot of different MSAs move at very different levels. We have MSAs that have been around for, mashallah, 50 plus years, and then we have MSAs that are barely starting out or are going through different cycles of their success. So as LSC, we are a council that focuses on, being able to deliver and work with MSAs on all levels and make sure that they are able to have as successful of a year as possible. Now, if you move on to the next slide, as of right now, alhamdulillah, LSC has a lot of different initiatives in place. A large chunk of our work is already virtual because we have executive board members that are scattered all across Texas, and our communication with MSAs is very much virtual with the conjunction of other in-person events. Right now, even though there are a lot of things that are going on online and virtually, for us, this is one of the greatest times that we can really connect with MSAs and MSAers directly, and not necessarily just MSA officers. We cultivate a lot of our content to the ongoing needs and feelings of our MSAs. So if we see that our MSAs are already putting out amazing webinars, amazing halakas that are doing things online, what we do as LSC is to really amplify and uplift the work, so that way other MSAers who maybe don't or aren't a part of that MSA still have a connection and can still feed off of those resources and are allowed to take on those opportunities as well. Our goal as LSC is really to make a space for individuals and Muslim college students across Texas that is engaging, useful, and of course offers a sense of community, especially during a time of crisis like this. So as of right now, a lot of LSC's initiatives are very much focused on spiritual and health, especially in regards to mental health. We offer different things like the Sahur Squad, which is an initiative we just started about a month ago, where we have MSAers from across Texas who are interested in fasting during this month right before Ramadan, kind of just, support each other and uplift each other as they are trying to, do the Sunnah and try and fast on Monday and Thursdays. Because all of the college campuses are now closed, we also offer Strengthening the Soul halakas, which focuses on purifying the heart. And this is a halakah that is available on our Instagram live every Friday. We also do weekly check-ins, not only with the MSA officers that we work in, but through our social media. So anyone who follows us, even if they're not, in Texas, or maybe they're not in college yet, just anyone who needs a check-in, who wants someone to talk to, we're always there for them. And whenever we have different resources and opportunities that come our way that we believe it will be beneficial to the population we serve, we always love to amplify the work that our partners are doing as well. Now, aside from spiritual initiatives that we have going on, we have a lot of social initiatives, and this is really to drive home the sense of community. Yes, this is a difficult time, but there's a lot of fun that can still happen even amidst all of the chaos around us. So we have different things like our Project Sadaqah fundraiser, which is still going on. We also have a Showdown film tournament and online bracket system going on, where as a lot of folks had previously mentioned, Showdown is basically like a 3-day weekend tournament style conference that we have every single year. This is like the MIST, but like on a college level. This is something that all college students really look forward to. And even though we're not able to have that this year, we still want to celebrate the work that all of our college students do. So we host watch parties online, we host different tournaments online, we have video game and online gaming tournaments that are still going on right now, and that are basically free to anyone as long as they want. Another initiative that we will be starting relatively soon, inshallah, is to highlight the amazing seniors who will be graduating this semester with our MSA MVP Mondays. So even though unfortunately a lot of folks may not be able to walk the stage of the semester or this May because of the crisis going on, we still want to celebrate and thank them for all of the amazing work that they've done, not only with their MSAs, but with their local Muslim communities. So that's something that we'll be doing on our social media. And of course, we're also trying to amplify our own work that we do, such as the ongoing Showdown anthologies, which highlights the different written pieces, performance poetry, and spoken word that has been done in Showdown in the past, as well as provide different resources, again, from our partners. And in regards to our partners, alhamdulillah, we've been able, over the past 20 or so years, we've been able to cultivate a lot of really strong relationship with our partners, and not only here in Texas, but also abroad. So, we love being able to share the different work that they're doing. So, for example, FACE is hosting a Sexual Assault Awareness Month during this week with a lot of different programming. So we really amplify their work. Another cool opportunity is with Roots, and they are essentially a third space located in the DFW that is specific for the Muslim youth and college students and the young professionals. So they host a lot of online halakas, and we love being able to share their work with our audience. We do different virtual phone banking opportunities, and again, just any ongoing webinars, classes, resources, or opportunities that come our way that we feel will be beneficial to students just like myself and you all. That's something that we definitely push forward with LSC. And on the next slide, aside from just initiatives that LSC is currently doing, there are a lot of amazing things that our MSAs are currently working on. So like I said, as LSC, we amplify the work that our MSAs are doing. So with Ramadan, alhamdulillah, being about a week away, a lot of MSAs are shifting gears and moving more towards Ramadan prep. So this is just an example of some of the incredible work that a lot of these MSAs are programming and gearing up to. We have schools like UT Austin that are about to start the Ramadan Intensive, which is a free online 2-day weekend intensive that is going to just be discussing, the fiqh of fasting and how Ramadan will be a lot different this year. We have the Black Muslim Alliance, which will be hosting Quran book clubs every week during Ramadan. We have a lot of different spiritual aspects and halakas that a lot of MSAs are hosting online that I've listed here. We also have a lot of student-led khataras. And of course, we have sisterhood and brotherhood online chats that a lot of MSAs are doing on their own and individually, but we love being able to connect them. And last but not least, we have a lot of MSAs that honestly are just creating content and programming just for fun. During a time like this, yes, it can be really stressful, but there's a lot of good that can come out of it. And we can still have that sense of community even online. So we have a lot of amazing MSAs. For example, the University of Houston is doing a weekly MSA podcast that is essentially different interviews with MSA officers and MSA members through their MSA. We have a Minute to Win It competition with the University of Texas at Arlington. We've seen a lot of creativity with board member introductions, doing TikToks, and of course, a lot of MSAs are also hosting Netflix parties online. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are on all social media. You can follow us at MSA LSC, and our email address is there as well. Even if you are in Texas, or if you're not in Texas, if you are a recent alumni or someone who is in high school that is about to enter college or university, we would love to be able to connect you guys with whatever resources we have possible. And inshallah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat.
Thank you so much, Amira. Definitely follow LSC, inshallah, on your social medias. They have been doing an amazing job for so many years down in Texas, and we're very lucky to have them. Okay, so our final speakers from a regional council will be Mariam Awal and Hasna Al-Nunu from MSA West. MSA West is the regional council in California and all across the West Coast. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them.
All right, assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Hasna Al-Nunu. I'm currently the internal vice president for MSA West. If we can go into the first slide, please. So MSA West is an organization that is comprised of 31 MSAs across the West Coast, serving around 3,000 students, alhamdulillah. And the mission of MSA West is to provide resources to develop principled Muslim students as catalysts for change. And our vision is a community invested in producing Muslim excellence. And what that means essentially is MSA West is determined to provide the resources that we know our students and our MSAs need in order to be able to flourish and develop their Muslim students into Islamically principled leaders who will be able to lead our community in future generations, inshallah. Next slide. And alhamdulillah, our values for MSA West are that we are student-centric, knowledge and responsibility focused. We have an emphasis on Islamic ethos. We do a lot of work with our research, and we do programs that lead to leadership development. And examples of kind of the way that we attempt to do these things is through going back to our community, understanding what they need. So oftentimes we do this through research. We were lucky enough to host a very large 500-person large survey last year in partnership with ISPU to be able to get a better understanding of our constituency. And so in this survey, we asked a plethora of questions across the range of advocacy needs, mental health needs, spiritual needs, socioeconomic status, how that impacts people's belief, where they stand, how they feel within the Muslim community, just to get a better understanding of those who are affiliated with our MSAs and MSA West as a whole, and those who are not affiliated with MSA West or their MSAs. And through that, we were able to develop programs and initiatives that are centered on the people that we know we need to serve best. And next slide, please. Yeah, so based on this ISPU survey, we kind of honed in our focuses on different particular areas of focus. One particular focus area for MSA West is we focus on leadership development. So one thing that we do, a program that we do yearly, is every summer we host a Student Leadership Summit, or SLS, where we invite all of the board members of all the MSAs that are affiliated with MSA West for one weekend in Fresno, which is kind of a central area in California. And we go through board member training. So we train them on all possible areas that any potential board member would need to know going into a year or term of leadership. We have a lot of programs focused on spiritual cultivation, like our Tajdeed retreat, which is a weekend away, kind of a spiritual weekend away in the woods. With the lack of technology and a lot of scholars, alhamdulillah. We also have something called the Spiritual Advisory Council, which is a council of really renowned and trustworthy scholars that we rely on for spiritual advice, but also support not only for MSA West Board, but also for other MSA boards who may need spiritual guidance on their particular board on certain issues. So they're kind of like a central figure for students who are affiliated with MSA West. Other things that we really heavily emphasize are advocacy and community organizing. MSA West is heavily involved in a lot of advocacy work. One of them being we have something called the Islamic Secret Activism Cohort, which is a cohort of about 25 to 30 students who go through a semester's worth of Islamic political curriculum. And the curriculum goes through essential trainings and understandings about how Islamic secret activism works, what justice looks like in Islam, and how that plays on the ground here in America as leaders in the community, and where our roles lie Islamically and as leaders of our community to our MSAs and the broader state. And there's this cohort goes on for about a year. We have a summit where they meet up and they work together to build campaigns and things of the sort to be able to be effective on the ground. Another area of focus MSA West has is a mental health and well-being focus. We do this through our regional councils. MSA West has a SoCal director and a NorCal director, and they both have their respective domain schools who they are affiliated with, and they sit through and have listening sessions with them where we analyze and ask them questions about the state of their MSA, their followings, their advocacy-related issues, relationships with admin, financial situation, spiritual development, dynamics and diversity within their communities. And we like to take those information, analyze them, and see where our MSAs are at so that we're able to provide them the necessary resources and possibly consultation, financial support that they may need, and also to be able to evaluate the differences and the comparisons between NorCal and SoCal MSAs. And then as well, on top of that, we have our academic and professional support where we offer support systems, consultations, and we also try to link and network individuals on a professional basis for students who are looking for internships, jobs, looking to work with MSA West on a professional level, support in whatever way they can, and then also be able to offer like academic support, especially in times where things might be getting difficult, like right now with the COVID pandemic.
So now just going into
and we've made it.
Go for it. Sorry.
Okay, so basically all of these areas of focus have impacted the direction that MSA West has taken at the current moment with the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. And so we've shifted from getting this understanding of our constituents within the broader spectrum, but focusing a bit more specifically to COVID response needs. And we did that through releasing a student needs survey about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had our constituents fill that out to be able to get a better understanding of people's biggest needs, where students are struggling the most right now, where they need the most support, and how MSA West can be able to provide the resources that they need and their MSAs need to be able to thrive during this lockdown situation. And the way that we ended up, the specific areas that we focused in after we got the results of the student needs survey is we're focusing on different particular committees. One is student needs, advocacy, financial strategy, fundraising, grants, and professional development. And inshallah, Mariam can carry on with the next slide regarding how that looks like.
Sorry about that, I got excited. So going into the actual results of the student needs survey, and I just wanted to explain like why we're kind of talking about this today. I know that everyone is kind of struggling right now and we're all facing a lot of different difficulties, but I think, you know, one thing that's really important as MSA leaders is to know what our constituents are facing. So the results of this, we had about 70 people respond. 40% of the students who did respond mentioned that they had difficulty paying rent. And this is obviously in the apartments that they're living in or that they were living in before moving home. And 50% of those students mentioned that they had urgent needs that they needed to be paid for regarding rent. And I think the reason for this is that, as you'll see next, 40% of those students mentioned that their parents had also faced a loss of income, and 45% mentioned that they themselves faced loss of income. So obviously, you know, there's a wide spectrum of students who are dealing with these issues, and not everyone is able to have a job. Like many people lost hourly jobs, for example. So I think, although it may not be as easy for MSAs to necessarily deal with this kind of issue or, you know, support financially, I think just in our programming and the way that we try to support our constituents, you know, we can respond accordingly, even if it's not necessarily in a material way, it's in a, you know, emotionally intelligent way. We also asked about what barriers students were facing to success. 20% mentioned that they were struggling with having a positive study environment. Anecdotally, a lot of the information that was brought up here was talking about, you know, having to take care of family members or younger siblings, or no longer having the same space that they once did to study. And so I think one idea that we've had in regards to this is having MSA study halls. So calling up people, or, you know, setting a time where everyone's on a Zoom call at the same time, so that you're encouraging everyone to study at the same time. 23.5% of students also mentioned that mental health was an issue. And I think with this, it's something that FYI mentioned before, you know, seeking help when you need it, and then making sure that your MSA members also are able to get help when they need it. So publicizing the Muslim mental health professionals in your area. 23.6% also mentioned that they were struggling with job and internship opportunities. So I think in this, you know, having MSAs try to reach out to their alumni network more and try to see what kind of things are available for students in the summer when they have lost their in-person job and internship opportunities. In terms of our advocacy response, we've had kind of two different avenues. So on one hand, we're trying to support and co-sponsor various webinars. So on April 15th, we just recently had a webinar with CARE LA and the Asian American Caucus on law enforcement and constitutional rights. We have one on April 22nd about employment rights and benefits. And we have one on April 29th about digital surveillance and privacy, which I think has become a very big issue recently with all the Zoom privacy issues. On the other hand, we're also trying to focus on what kind of campaign advocacy we can focus on. So we're trying to see what kind of different campaigns are going on right now that are working on providing COVID relief for students. So for example, trying to see if there are rent relief or lease breaking up campaigns that are trying to negotiate with landlords, or having statewide rent relief where students no longer have to pay rent for those months that they're not actually in their apartments. And then lastly, there's the Supporting Students in Response to the Coronavirus Act, which is something that's being discussed in Congress right now, which would potentially focus a lot of grant money or extend grants to students. And so this is something that we're trying to have our students, for example, in the Islamic Sacred Activism cohort, try to support in a digital campaign, for example, or whatever way they can. And then on the spiritual side, we're mostly trying to do different kinds of programs. So I know that something that Hanan also mentioned is that there is like an overload of webinars right now. So we're really trying to see what people are looking for before we try to just put things out. And then in that, we're also trying to get the questions before we, you know, put programs out. So we recently held a family dynamics webinar with the Khalil Center, which was really successful. It was a lot about how to deal with coming back home, how to rebuild our relations with our parents and our families. So some other ideas we had along the same line, we have a spiritual advisory council that Hasna mentioned, and we want to try to have Q&As with those speakers that are on that council, or potentially have everyone read an article beforehand and then meet up, or hold a listening session where, you know, they're more interactive. So they're really about what the constituents want versus just, you know, putting things out there where people are all listening silently and aren't really able to engage in the same way. And lastly, I think both the Lone Star Council and Musa really highlighted a lot of their MSA responses. I just wanted to highlight the things people, you know, there's a lot of things we can still do, obviously having online elections. I think everyone's holding online halqas right now. I thought something that was really, you know, interesting is that there are still MSA committee meetings happening, which I think it is a really beneficial way for people to stay productive, even if, you know, it doesn't seem like you can be productive in the same way. Having Quran reading circles, I think, is a really beautiful way to share space together and also just worship. And I thought the funnest thing that I saw was online cook-offs. So everyone it has like a time span where they're able to upload something. For example, I've seen a lot with like you have to use eggs in your dish and then you just post something on Instagram and then everyone votes on whichever is the best. So there's still a lot of ways to engage and connect, alhamdulillah, with what we have. So that's MSA West. Here's all our social media. The email address I included was my own because I'm the external vice president. If anyone has any questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out on any of these. And thank you so much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hasna and Mariam, for that wonderful presentation. Once again, definitely do follow MSA West. They do amazing work throughout California and on the West Coast. So before we move on to Q&A, we have a list of additional ideas that you might benefit from. It'll be divided into resources, specifically financial and career resources, and then also creative initiatives that your own MSA can take. But before I get into that, I would just like to remind everyone, we do have 10 minutes of Q&A at the end, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So send questions that you have on the YouTube chat. We have Hanan as well as all of our MSA regional leaders on the call, and they'll be free to take any questions you may have. So let's move on with the resources, beginning with career support. So for a lot of people, there is obviously uncertainty with the job market, with building a resume, with getting an internship, etc. So there's this wonderful resource called buildthepro.com. And it's actually essentially a marketplace for career development. You can find people that are at a company you're interested in. They can help you get connected. They also help build your resume. They offer free resume reviews as well as free mentorship. So they're an amazing organization. I would also add one more specifically for those of you in tech. There's a site called Silver Lining, and it basically posts openings in tech companies that are currently hiring and do not have a hiring freeze. So those are two wonderful resources: Builds the Pro for your resume review needs, for mentorship, and Silver Lining specifically if you're in tech. Moving on to the second resource, financial support. Of course, a lot of us personally, our family, friends might be in need of financial support. So this is a couple of communal resources that might be of benefit. Penny Appeal offers a grant specifically for COVID-19 that might be of interest to check out. And there are also organizations that offer interest-free student loans. So you have a continuous charity that you can access at acceducate.org. So these two are amazing resources that you can definitely reach out to, and inshallah, they can be of benefit for you personally or for your friends and family. Moving on to creative initiatives. So this is just going to be a list of 5 different categories of just sort of injecting different ideas that you can do, whatever works for your MSA. And as a reminder, this slide and the recorded version of this call presentation will be on our site, msanational.org. So you can access it at any time or share it with your MSA board members when you get back. So we're going to be dividing creative initiatives into 4 categories: strengthening communal bonds of your MSA, serving your local physical community, developing spiritually, and spreading joy. And we have a list of ideas for each of them. So moving on to the first, strengthening and building relationships. Some ideas include developing mentoring groups. A lot of fraternity sororities have this big brother, big sister program where they pair up an older student with a younger student. That is a wonderful potential model for incoming students who want to be able to have an older mentor to look up to and to work with. You can group people based on their major, their career planning, if they're part of a potential MSA leadership track, hobbies, whatever is up to you. Also, talk to high school students in your community. You might not know it, but you definitely have a lot of amazing experience about college, and some of the seniors especially might be going through some uncertain times, so you can be a wonderful resource for them. You can help with their college applications and potentially provide advice on the financial aid applications, though of course ensuring that you're not getting confidential information when you're doing that. And then finally, another idea of building that sort of communal relationships at this time is celebrating through no-show galas. So, you know, a lot of us were planning grad banquets or Eid banquets, and even though we can't do that physically, we can certainly still do that virtually. We can still host, you know, a Zoom meeting, meet each other, congratulate each other, have some sort of creative way to strengthen that bond. Really, the sky's the limit in terms of creativity and things you can do in a fun way. And this is just an example of a no-show gala. If you're interested in kind of what it means, it's basically a virtual fundraiser that you know, you don't have to get dressed up to or be super formal at, but it's an opportunity for MSAs to still be able to fundraise uh, despite not having the physical apparatus, because a lot of us depend so much on fundraising or those sort of communal events for a lot of our funding. Moving on to the second category, serving your physical local community. So a lot of us are back at home, we're not at college, but there's still a lot of work that we can do for the people around us. So there's blood donation campaigns. You know, having, I found this beautiful, having like a check-in system where you check in with elderly figures of your community that might be isolated or might not have anyone else to go to, you know, just 30 minutes, an hour, having a phone call with them, having your MSA split up and have a couple of people each. It's an amazing way to build community, to provide solace during this time. You know, having volunteering for sort of distancing institutions like Meals on Wheels, are helping review resumes and cover letters for local students. All of these are amazing opportunities that you can do that don't necessitate physical contact, but do amazing work in actually building that bond of community. The third is spiritual development. So of course, all of us are aware that Ramadan is just right around the corner. And I'm sure that for a lot of us, it's going to be a very, inshallah, necessary Ramadan. So these are some ideas that you can still host as an MSA. You can have a Quran memorization competition, a Quran completion reading competition. You can have a spelling bee of Quranic words and phrases, a book club, trivia night, you know, watching, there's so many live webinars going on, maybe choosing one, watching it together, having a post-webinar discussion to keep that sort of spiritual, intellectual fluid still moving. Organizing halaqas that can be done virtually. You know, Yaqeen has launched this thing called conviction circles. They're an amazing resource that basically provide a very structured halaqa type format for you to work with around key controversial issues or essential issues. So that's another amazing resource that you can continue pushing MSA programming without being there in person. And it's especially key as Ramadan comes up. And then last but not least, just in terms of, you know, spreading joy and happiness in general, it doesn't have to be with your MSA community or your local community. It can be things that you can do with everyone, you know, having a session where you invite people to come on and paint, sending Ramadan cards, hosting a book club, hosting a calligraphy class. I know those are always super popular on campus, and I can definitely see them being very popular even virtually. So the point being that these are all different ideas that enable us to push the boundaries of what we originally thought we could or couldn't do. And we don't have to just stick to our own MSA, our own initial group of people. We can work together because we're facing the same challenges, and we can coordinate, we can build things that, you know, we never thought we could possibly build. So really, the sky's the limit, and I'm actually very excited to see what the community comes up with as the year progresses. So with that, we're going to move into Q&A. Again, if you have any questions, please do feel free to put it in the chat, and we will, inshallah, try to get to it. But I already have a list of questions here, so I'm going to begin with that. The first question, and I think Hanan, perhaps you can specifically speak to this, is how would one maintain relationships with loved ones while social distancing? This can be family, friends, romantic relationships, etc.
Sorry. That's a good question. And it's an answer that I don't like giving, but it depends, right? It depends on the relationship that you have with those individuals. If it's, I would say choose something that you guys both enjoy doing and doing it together, right? Whether that's if you both enjoy reading and then having something to talk about, whether that's art, maybe working on different art projects and coming back together. There's also, of course, like, you know, watching movies together, watching YouTube, doing halaqas together. I'm assuming that, yeah, so this is while social distancing. So of course the internet can be a blessing in that regard, but also being creative with it. It doesn't just have to be talking every day, right? So think like, what kind of stuff do you enjoy doing with your friends? What kind of stuff do you enjoy doing with the people in your life? Just do that, but like a modified version of it.
Thank you so much. The second question is an important one as well. Stress. How do you deal with stress, especially, you know, the possibility of losing loved ones, and also an addendum, you know, trying to balance that every day with, you know, the nearing fear of qiyamah, or, you know, maybe our own mortality. Hanan, perhaps you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, that's a really heavy question, but it's an important question that I think we're all forced to face right now. And I think it goes back to what I was talking about in regards to what you can control and what you can't control. So what you can control is maybe how well you take care of your body right now, but you can't control what's already written for you, right? You can't control like you know, the fact that this whole coronavirus pandemic situation happened, we know that that was already going to happen, right? There's nothing that we could have done to stop it. So again, like going back and writing down the list of things and being able to concretely identify what is it in my life that I can control? Okay, what are those? What can I do about each of those things? But then the things that you can't control, that's where you make dua, right? And you turn it into something that you can control by making dua, by talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by looking into literature about, you know, how to deal with those things. I've seen like quite a few like existential type talks by quite a few scholars these days, because it is something that a lot of people are thinking about, that's coming up for a lot of people. So yeah, again, like writing it down and being able to observe it and identify and kind of hit one point after the other. Inshallah.
Perfect. One more question for you, Hanan. You mentioned daily routine. How do you actually start trying to create a daily routine?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So what I suggest is create, kind of look back at the last 3 days and create a schedule of what you've done in the last 3 days. So literally writing like, okay, I woke up at this time, and then this is how long I worked, or this is what we did, and then it took me this long to eat, or this long to make food, or I talked to friends for this. Like literally write, like have a schedule and write down for the last 3 days, and then take a look at that and be like, you know, did you feel like something was missing from that? Did you feel like maybe you should have talked to people less, or maybe you feel like you should have talked to people more, you should have connected more, maybe you should have played Animal Crossing a little bit less, or maybe you want to put more time to play Animal Crossing, right? So again, like listening to what you want to do and making it personal to you. That's, I would suggest that. So like start, like you've already been surviving this, right, up until now. So look at maybe the last week, even like what have you done during the weekends? Like what does Monday look like? I know for college students, every day is different with classes and events. So just looking at like, what has my last week looked like? And how do you feel about that? Like, what do you want to change with that, right? Is there something in your schedule that's stopping you from making your salah on time, right? Like, do you want to move things around and be more concrete about what you do the next 3 days? And then also, that's another thing, right? For the next, when creating a schedule, just do it for the next day or 2 days or 3 days, and then reevaluate, right? Like time is not going anywhere. So you could, like 3 days from now is going to come, look at it and then be like, okay, that was an unrealistic goal for me. Let me change it. Let me try to do something else instead. Or be like, oh, that was like, I loved this part of it. I'm going to make sure that I keep doing this. So it's like create and reevaluate, and it just, and then go from there, inshallah.
Okay. Final two more questions. The first is for the councils. What are some ways we can collaborate to advocate for our students on a nationwide advocacy level? So councils, feel free to jump in with any ideas.
Assalamu alaikum. So Anshul, I can speak on behalf of what MSA West does. MSA West is, alhamdulillah, the way that we attempt to gather and utilize our resources to be able to collaborate for advocacy needs and to advocate on behalf of students is utilizing the fact that we are a grassroots nonprofit organization. As a nonprofit organization, we're able to apply for grants and things like that. We also have a really strong network of students across a lot of MSAs, and by creating a structure and infrastructure to have students learn about advocacy, work on advocacy related campaigns, to be able to give them the space to come together and discuss issues and to brainstorm how we can combat these issues. Through that, we're able to create a structure of utilizing our students to advocate for other students' needs. So at the end of the day, it kind of does come down to the councils and their responsibility to utilize their structure, their connections, their power to be able to give the students the resources and the ability to come together to do what a lot of students, a lot of Muslim community members aren't doing, which is advocating for not only students, but the general Muslim community. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, alhamdulillah, with us here in Texas, we are a nonprofit LLC, but we didn't start off in terms of like with the whole grassroots orientation. That's something that we are slowly shifting into, especially now that there are a lot more challenges that we face, especially as Muslim college students and our Muslim communities as a whole. Now with LSC and the way that we kind of function and serve with MSAs and our partners, if there are advocacy initiatives and if there are MSAs that are interested in being able to push their MSA in that direction, what we really do is kind of serve as the middleman. So we will partner up MSAs or these MSAers with whatever resources we have, whether it's local to them or something that's available on a statewide level. When it comes to connecting them to alumni who may have more experience with those kind of things, that we really work to connect a lot of people across the board in that way. With things like the election and other political things that are happening, we are working to kind of elevate our voices together, first and foremost, like on a state level before we kind of move it forwards nationwide. But it's something that LSC is working definitely towards. And right now our greatest strong suit is really just being able to connect whatever resources and alumni that we have within our power and reach with people who are interested in moving in that direction.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hassan, Mira, both for that. Just one point I'll add, because this is something that's also very close to my heart, is whenever we think about advocacy efforts, it always starts from the ground up. So if you are interested in a campaign, chances are that there are going to be a lot of other Muslim students who are also facing the same issue. It depends on you to try and motivate and mobilize your local MSA forward, reaching out through personal connections, etc., and reaching out to these regional councils, and together we'll be able to mobilize and strategize and train and really push to further heights. But it begins at an individual local level and it continues from there. The final question we have is if you guys have specific advice for international students who are away from home, away from families. Hanan, perhaps you can speak to about the personal, emotional, mental health aspect, and our council leaders, you guys can speak to any academic or resources, institutional resources that you might be able to provide for those students.
Yeah, so I currently work for a counseling center at a nearby university. And one of my clients is actually an international student, and she has been basically stuck here because her country closed their borders. And I can tell you that it's really difficult, right, to be in a place that is foreign to you and then being kicked out of the university and having to kind of stay with someone, or even if you're still on campus, but having to stay alone. That can be very, very difficult. And so I really suggest for the MSAs to like creating some, and I'm curious to see like if there's already anything being done, but creating some sort of system where you can like adopt someone who doesn't have a family here, especially given that Ramadan is coming up. Like we're already having a hard time thinking like, oh, we can't go to Taraweeh, right? But imagine not even being able to be with your community at all, or with your family, or like even being close to them, and then the time difference, so not even being able to communicate with them as often or as frequently or as consistently as you'd like. So I mean, I can kind of speak to how difficult that is, but I'm curious to know if you guys already have ideas or have already done any programs.
Yes. Oh, do you want to, you can go ahead.
You can start, no worries. You're good.
Okay. I'm sure we will have very similar ideas, especially the way our organizations are oriented. But yeah, with LSC, that's something we're definitely, gearing and shifting into. And I mean, it's definitely a big emphasis, especially with Ramadan coming up. That's honestly one of the hardest times, especially when you don't have, immediate family or a sense of community with you physically. So with that, we do have a couple of initiatives that we will be launching in terms of whether it's like a buddy system or having what we have currently going on right now with Sahur Squad, but expanding it to include, specific groups such as like a revert community or a convert community or an international student community, that kind of stuff. So definitely, we highly recommend that for any international students, even if you're not necessarily super connected to your MSA community, like definitely reach out. With us, with LSC, we love seeing all of the initiatives that a lot of MSAs do, and a lot of MSA officers, they want to be able to connect with, the international student Muslim community. So definitely feel comfortable reaching out. If for whatever reason you don't, you can always, message us or, contact us on any social media platform, and we would love to be, that middleman to kind of make that conversation a little bit less awkward. And that's more so for the spiritual aspect. Now, when it comes to things regarding like school and being able to balance that, we definitely recommend that you guys reach out to your advisor or, whoever is like your immediate contact on the university level. I believe for a lot of international students, they're given like a direct advisor to work with. And as of right now, I mean, because a lot of our spring semester is coming to an end, there's a lot of uncertainty about, how does it look like in the summer for a lot of these international students who may not be able to go back home and are just kind of stuck here by themselves. So definitely reach out to them. They may be able to connect you with some financial resources or different community or university-based resources. And of course, like I keep mentioning, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We know that it's definitely awkward kind of making that first move, but we want to be able to help you guys out as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's one of the things that alhamdulillah that we were looking at as well. Recently we saw on Twitter, there's this brother in Chicago. He was talking about how he was all by himself and he had to do self quarantine for like 2 weeks, and so he was really feeling lonely. And then another Muslim brother like reached out to him and was like, "Hey, once your thing is up, I'm down to come visit and stuff." So we were really inspired by that, and we're like, yeah, there are a lot of people who will be alone. There are a lot of international students who are going to be struggling with that, but there's also a lot of people who have that structure, who don't have a lot of people that they're going to be coming in contact with, that can partner up with those students and really create some type of system, especially during Ramadan, where they can come together. Because even if it's like one or two people, that's okay. You're still following the rules. So definitely trying to provide that structure to connect people is something that we're looking at doing, especially with Ramadan happening next week. So inshallah, if you're an international student, definitely reach out to your local council, your local MSA, and see if they have anything in like place, or if they'd be interested in helping you find something. Just because, alhamdulillah, this is going to be a very hard time. I think for everyone, this is going to be very not traditional Ramadan, already a not traditional, past month. And so definitely whatever you can to help to make it easier. As well as definitely try as much as possible. I know family is in a very different time zone, but definitely try to keep that connection, whether it be voice calls, video calls, daily like schedule of some type where like you guys can connect with each other. That'll still try to help, at least keep those bonds, during this time, inshallah.
I just wanted to add two things real quick. One, MSA West does have a legal response database too, or rapid response database. if you are facing any like legal issues with immigration, for example, I just want to put that out there. It's on our website under rapid response resources. And I think the other thing I just wanted to mention also is that there's an aphorism by a 13th century metaphysician, Ibn Attallah, that says, if Allah is separating you from creation, know that he wants you to turn to him and that he wants you to come back to him. And so I think this is something that we're all facing right now to a certain extent of loneliness, and especially obviously our international students. And I just wanted to say, Allah knows what we're going through. He knows how difficult this is for all of us, and that this is really a beautiful time, especially with Ramadan coming up, to turn back to him. Whether it's with prayer, whether it's with dua, whether it's or even if it's just like trying to talk to God, I think it's really going to be a beneficial way for us all to be able to strengthen our relationship with our religion and with Allah through this trial that we're all facing.
Perfect. Jazakallah. Thank you guys for the questions, and thank you guys for the insightful responses. Just in conclusion, remember that inshallah, all of this will be on msanational.org. You can also feel free to send us an email through that website. I would like to also, one of the goals of this webinar was to ensure that you guys leave with strength, with ideas, with hope, and inshallah, this was of some benefit to doing that. Remember to stay safe, follow the rules of your state during quarantine, and I would like to thank Amira, Hasna, Mariam, Hanan, Ziad, all of them for taking their time out and being here. And also one last huge shout out to Hamad, who is my co-student director, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but he's put in so much work in this webinar and the webinar series at large. He was unfortunately not able to join us because of an exam, but please keep him and the rest of our speakers and everyone else in your du'as, especially as Ramadan comes. Let's just end off with a du'a. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Ya Allah, allow this to be a means, this time to be a means of ease and light and blessings in ways we could never have imagined. Ya Allah, help us unify and strengthen bonds of light and hope and faith between us. Ya Allah, bless everyone who was able to make it on, who wasn't able to make it on, who spoke and who listened. And Ya Allah, let us be all reunited in Jannat al-Firdaus al-Ala. Make this Ramadan a beautiful Ramadan that all of us will remember for the rest of our lives. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Jazakallah, everyone.